You know, the whole world of blockchain is going through this massive change right now. What started out with these single, one-size-fits-all chains is evolving into something way more scalable, customizable, and honestly, a lot more powerful. So today, we're going to dive into Avalanche and see how its modular vision is tackling some of the oldest, most stubborn problems in crypto.
So to really get what's going on, let's start with a super simple idea. Imagine a huge, bustling city, but it only has one road. And I mean one road for everything. Cars, buses, ambulances, delivery trucks, you name it. You can already see the problem, right? It's a total recipe for disaster.
And believe it or not, for years, that's pretty much what the blockchain world looked like. This gets to the heart of why we needed a completely new blueprint in the first place.
Okay, so those early chains like Bitcoin and Ethereum, which were brilliant, don't get me wrong, they basically process everything on that single road. And what ends up happening? A constant traffic jam. Your throughput is tiny, maybe 7 to 30 transactions a second for the whole world. Then a popular new app launches and bam, gas fees shoot through the roof and the entire network slows to a crawl for everyone. It just makes transaction times completely unpredictable.
So how do you fix a problem like that? Well, you don't just try to build a faster road. You have to design a whole new city. And that is exactly the approach Avalanche took.
The core idea here is actually pretty simple, but it's revolutionary. Just stop forcing every single task onto one single, overburdened chain. Instead, Avalanche built a foundation. They call it the primary network that splits up different jobs onto specialized chains. It's all about handling traffic way more efficiently.
All right, so let's break down how this actually works. This primary network has 3 of these specialized roads. First, you've got the X chain. It's built for one thing and one thing only, creating and trading assets super fast. Then there's the C chain. This is where all the smart contracts and dApps live, and this is a huge deal for developers, it's compatible with Ethereum. And finally, the P chain acts like the network's air traffic control, managing all the validators and keeping everything in sync.
But here's the thing, that primary network is just the foundation. The real game changer, the core innovation that makes Avalanche so different is something called a subnet.
So what on earth is a subnet? Think of it like a kit that lets anyone build their own custom highway and connect it back to the main city. It's basically a dedicated crew of validators that can run one or even a bunch of totally independent blockchains, each playing by its own set of rules.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. On a traditional chain, all the apps are stuck fighting for the same limited space, like that one road. So if a popular game gets huge, the congestion can make your simple financial transaction grind to a halt. But with a subnet, an application gets its own dedicated blockchain. Traffic in one subnet has literally zero effect on any other. It's like giving every big app its own private, congestion-free expressway.
And this is the part that gives builders superpowers. You can create a totally private chain just for a bank, or a public one for a massive online game. You can decide exactly who gets to be a validator, maybe only institutions that have gone through KYC checks. You can create your own custom fees. You can even choose a unique engine or what's called a virtual machine to run your chain, optimizing it for whatever you need. This kind of flexibility is what really unlocks a whole new world of possibilities.
Okay, but what about speed? Let's talk about finality. That's how long it takes for your transaction to be locked in and permanent. On Bitcoin, you could be waiting for an hour. On Ethereum, it's several minutes. On Avalanche, your transaction is final in under 2 seconds. That's not just a little better, it's a completely different league of performance.
Now all this tech sounds great in theory, right? But is anyone actually using it? Let's take a look at how this blueprint is becoming a reality in some huge industries.
First up, gaming. You know, modern games need to handle millions of tiny little transactions for things like in-game items, skins, and rewards. This is one area where insane speed and super low fees are absolutely non-negotiable.
And here's a perfect example. The legendary game MapleStory launched on its own Avalanche subnet. And the result? They were able to scale like crazy, more than doubling their active wallets to over 1.3 million. That's exactly the kind of growth a dedicated blockchain makes possible.
All right, next up, let's talk about global finance. Big institutions need speed, sure, but they also crave security, compliance, and control, things that are really hard to get on a public one-size-fits-all chain.
This is where subnets are an absolute game changer for finance. We're seeing some of the biggest names in the world. We're talking BlackRock, Franklin Templeton, using Avalanche's tech for things like tokenized funds. It's that ability to create permissioned environments with custom rules that makes it all possible.
And it doesn't stop there. Even the public sector is starting to explore this technology to make things like property records way more efficient and secure, helping cut down on fraud and all that bureaucratic red tape.
Get this, in one pilot program, a government used Avalanche to digitize real estate deeds. The time it took to settle a property transfer went from about 90 days all the way down to just 1. That is an absolutely mind-blowing improvement in efficiency.
So when you start to put all these pieces together, the gaming, the finance, the government applications, a really clear picture of the future starts to form. And it's a future that is built on this idea of modularity.
And this brings us to the really big question, right? What is the ultimate vision here? What does this all mean for the future of the internet itself?
Here's the key takeaway from all of this. The future isn't about finding one single blockchain to do everything. We've seen that model. It just creates bottlenecks. No, the future is an internet of blockchains, a huge, interconnected web where thousands of custom-built chains can all talk to each other, each one perfectly optimized for its own specific job.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. Just imagine if you could create a custom, high-speed, independent blockchain for literally any application you could dream of. For finance, for gaming, for art, for identity. What new worlds would that unlock? What could you build?